Rejection is a root that runs deep. It's the thing that fuels fear of judgment and comparison. I want to rewrite that story and introduce love as the power that liberates us.
Welcome to the Sifted Wheat Podcast with Leslie Lamb, a counselor by profession, a minister of truth, and a lover of people. This is a safe place where she sets a path for others to learn how to move through hard seasons with confidence and grace, encouraging your faith, empowering your choices, and challenging your perceptions through the Word, the wisdom from years of counseling others, and her own experience of being sifted. Here's Leslie.
One of the hardest things about doing a podcast is sifting through all of the information that can be the subject of any one of these episodes. But the more I spend time with people, specifically the more I spend time with the church, the more I recognize that rejection runs deep in us. Many of us were born into the world with a sense of rejection. We feel unwanted, unseen, unanticipated, and unprepared for. And others made our way there through unhealthy relationships with our family of origin or even romantic partners along the way. That rejection begins to speak incompetence, lack of worth, and it starts at the youngest of ages. It attempts to inform our identity and move us out of belonging and love into comparison and fear. But God reminds us time and time again that He sees us. Remember Genesis 16:13? He sees us being formed. Psalm 139. He sees us in our struggles. Psalm 34:15 reminds us. He sees us in our fears. Isaiah 41:10 points to that truth. And in our sin, which is emphasized in Micah 7:18. And despite all of those places that He sees us, He reiterates that He loves us. John 3:16-17 reminds us, "For God so loved the world that He sent His Son, not to condemn us, but that through Him we might be saved." The purpose from the beginning was born from a place of love. God loved, therefore He did. Rejection condemns, but love claims. We weren't created to be rejected. That might be our genetic DNA. That might be the narrative or the story that we've told ourselves, or unfortunately and sadly that others have told us. But it isn't our eternal heritage. 1 John 4:18 reads, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever fears has not been perfected in love." The ultimate punishment or fear is separation, rejection. But John reminds us that fear is not our story. Love is. And we know that we are loved because God has said it. His word says, "You love because you were first loved." And when we know that we're loved, you know what we don't do? We don't compare ourselves. If I know that I am loved and seen and valued, that I truly belong, I don't fear that I'm not enough or that someone might be better than me. I know that I'm His, and that in His love, I am made perfect. And that's not just soul settling, but that is life altering. I don't have to look around me to assess my value. I can look up and know that I'm part of a bigger story, a love story. And so is everyone else. One person is not more valued than another. I know oftentimes you hear people say, "Well, I'm God's favorite." Well, the good news is we all are. We're all God's masterpiece. He tells us that time and time again, that He created us because He loves us, and He loves us just because He created us. No one has extra favor with God. But there are those who are disconnected from Him. There are those who have said in their hearts, "I do not want this God to be my source. I do not want to live in the quote unquote bondage of being under someone's authority. I get that. Authority can be scary. And if you look around, there's a lot of authority that misuses its power. And if you think of some universal power that might use it in a way that is inconsistent with love and is more about punishment or having a power trip, that doesn't bring safety. That doesn't bring trust. That doesn't bring us any closer to the source of love. And I guess that's kind of what the enemy wants to do, right? Move us away from the authority that is good and will look out for us, and move us into this sense that we don't need authority when ultimately we are still under the authority of the enemy of our soul. I know a lot of people do not like to hear that we have an enemy, or they think that maybe that's just Christianese for struggle or things that come against us. I get that. But I also think it's dangerous to assume that there's nothing working against us. Yes, we have some thoughts in our own heads that are negative and not helpful and unhealthy. But there's also someone that promotes that thought, that promotes the sense that we're being rejected, that promotes the sense that there is a value and you are not it, that you're not enough. And that can be scary, and it can be frustrating, and it can be depressing. But the good news is he's lying. Jesus said that we do have an enemy, and he spoke about him often. And one thing that he did say was he's the father of lies, and there's no truth in him. So if we believe that Jesus is a good teacher, and he said, hey, there's someone working against you, and he is a liar, I guess I kind of have to believe that. Otherwise, why could I say that Jesus is a good teacher? Because he would have lied to us, and that's not good. The important thing to remember is that God sees the heart. He longs for the heart. That's the message of acceptance and worth that replaces the fear of rejection and not enough. Oftentimes we think that the presence of something is the absence of something else. So if someone else is in the room and they are beautiful and they are attended to, then I start to think that I am not beautiful because no one noticed me. But that's not actually true. The presence of something isn't the absence of something else. In other words, just because beauty or talent or intellect exist for someone else and is noted by someone else, doesn't it all mean that those things aren't also present in you? The good news is there are enough resources in this world for us all to have a part. And by any and all means, please do not get in that trap that compares your everyday with someone else's highlight reel. The reality is God isn't looking at their highlight reel and comparing you. He's not looking at all of the things that they've accomplished and looking down at you and thinking, why couldn't you do more? No, he's not doing that. He's also not comparing their closet moment with yours. I heard so many people say, I never did go to counseling because I felt like my trauma wasn't significant. But that's a lie, because the event isn't what embeds the trauma, right? It's what happened because of the event. It's how I learned to think about myself. It is how I learned to view the world around me. And that can happen in the simplest of cases. It doesn't have to be this cataclysmic, horrible thing that forever changed our lives. Sometimes it can be the smallest comment or the smallest moment that began to embed shame or began to embed a sense of lack of worth or lack of beauty. And you've been fighting that thought your whole entire life. So no, God isn't looking at her and saying, yeah, she's been through more trauma. I'm going to side with her. I'm going to show her more favor. No, but he is going to meet her and he is going to comfort her. And guess what? He's going to meet you and comfort you too. It doesn't matter what it is that's crushed your heart. It doesn't matter what it is that's broken it. God's word is the same, that he doesn't despise a crushed or broken heart, that he doesn't look away in those moments of pain and suffering, but he's there, he's engaged, he's involved. God isn't overlooking your needs to meet the needs of another. He isn't setting someone else apart as more valuable or more needy than you. He's meeting you both with what you need at the exact moment that you need it. Trust him. He cares for you, which means that he's looking out for your best interests too. We can't assume that God is holding out on us. That's the lie. Genesis 3. We'll always go back to that. He's not holding out on you. That's the father of lies that speaks that over you, and he is lying. It's the lie of the ages to move you away from pure love and acceptance back into fear and rejection. I recognize parenting is hard. And I recognize parenting is hard when I recognize what I do wrong as a parent. And it's not like I'm intentionally doing those things. It's that sometimes I lose sight that there is another child that might be listening in or looking on. And so in those moments where I commend one, because the enemy of our soul wants us to feel rejected, the one who's listening or the one who sees that can start to believe in her heart that she's not worthy of that approval or she's not worthy of that compliment. And that crushes my heart as a parent because it's not true. Just because I chose in that moment to focus on one of my daughters instead of both of my daughters doesn't suddenly mean that I don't care about one or that I value one over the other. But unfortunately, that becomes the message of our lives. Unfortunately, those small moments with our siblings can be that embedded message that says, look, see, you're not enough. They didn't care about you. Your sister is doing more than you, or your sibling has more value than you because she is better in this one area. If you were better in this one area, maybe they would love you like they love her. I mean, as I'm saying that, I realize that maybe it sounds ridiculous. But after years of counseling, I realized that it does happen. And it happens more times than we would often give credit for. There's this inborn comparison that happens between siblings, and it breaks my heart. And I think if I'm a parent that is flawed and human, how much more does it break the Father's heart who created us and knows that we've been lied to, knows that he is coming forth to say, no, I choose you. I chose you. You are mine. I'm connected to you because I choose to be connected to you. I want to be connected to you. You matter to me. I find you beautiful. I find you intellectual. I find you amazing. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves of that. Sometimes we have to remind ourselves that the one who created us finds us amazing. And not to put ourselves on a pedestal, but to recognize that we do have value. Someone does see the truth of who we are and finds that we measure up, finds that our value is significant. I don't know where you are in this story. I don't know if you're a sibling. I don't know if you're a parent. I don't know if you're just hanging on to the words of the enemy and believing that that's your identity and that you have to fight to make your way seen in this world or to make yourself known. Wherever you find yourself, I want to encourage you, look in the verses that talk about God's compassion towards you and the way that he views you. Look at those verses that I mentioned in the beginning. Read them for yourself. See that he's involved and he sees he's not separate from you. He's not distant from you. He loves you. And if love is the thing that casts out fear, we need to lean more into love. I encourage you in those moments where you're feeling defeated or you're feeling discouraged or you're feeling disempowered. Is that what love would say? Because God is love. He is pure love. Love is not God, but God is love. So if we're looking for the voice of God, if we're looking for the heart of God, we need to start seeing it through the lens of love. What would love say? What is love saying over you right now? Sometimes I'll take a moment in those hard spaces, and all of those things that I'm feeling and fearing will come flooding in, and I will literally push them back. I will literally put up my hands and say, stop. And I'll say, Leslie, what does love say? What is love calling you right now? What is love reminding you of? Where is love in your comparison with this other person? Where is love when your fear of rejection is starting to mount up and you're feeling unseen and undervalued? Where is love? And peace starts to settle over me. And I'm reminded once again, rejection's not my story. Love is. And love gives me the courage and the power to stand up from this place, to resist whatever else is coming into my ears or whatever else is pushing against my feelings. And my soul reminds me, you're enough. God sees you. He values you. It doesn't matter that no one else does in this moment. You're enough. Look, the voice of God confirms your worth by his sacrifice and your redemption. Rejection is the weapon of the enemy of your soul. And the lover of your soul says, you are mine.